Despite what the law might tell you, there's a time and a place for running red lights. My favourite time of day is early mornings or late nights when the roads are clear and the only person I'm putting at risk is myself. But my relationship with red lights has changed recently, whereas I used to speed towards them in the hopes that they might turn green at the last second or there'd be no oncoming traffic. Now when I see one, I take an opportunity to reflect, take note of my surroundings. I don't see it as an obstacle anymore. And actually by doing so, I do still run them just a bit more carefully. I'm thinking about my ride here earlier. I was like, oh, I'm a hypocrite. And they're good for a lot of things. They're good for writing things down in your phone that you don't want to forget. And I wouldn't have had the beginning of this story otherwise. It went like this. Hey Siri, can you write me a note? Despite what the law might tell you, there's a time and a place for running red lights. I once went on a date with someone in the city of love, no less. It was quite a magical first day. I met them at a bar and we got talking and they told me that they really liked biking and I got really excited because me too, I love biking. It was the kind of excited you get on a first date when you really fancy someone but you don't really know them, and then you find that you share a common interest and it doesn't really matter how common that interest is because suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, we're a match made in heaven. And as we left the bar and they walked towards their bike, I had to stop them to say, wait, I came by Velib, and they laughed in my face. And it wasn't mean, it was playful, but it stuck with me nonetheless. Not unlike many of the things actually that they said or that they did in the following months that weren't necessarily mean, but they were always a little bit cutting. And maybe I should have taken that first interaction as a clearer sign of what was to come more than the fact that we like the same mode of transport. And it's not that I didn't want my own bike, I actually really did want my own bike. It's just that I live in Paris and so I thought it's only going to get stolen. What is the point? And I really don't want to lug it up and down my stairs like I've seen friends stronger than myself do. But despite the rocky start, the relationship that followed was quite a transformative one for me. Excuse the pun, but I could say that we started off in the wrong gear. Things got better as we adjusted to each other's rhythms and actually gradually our habits intertwined as intimately as our bodies did, and particularly in summer actually, I was borderline obsessed with them to the point where I didn't want to be apart from them, and if I had to go to a social event and I couldn't bring them with me, I would have rather stayed home, which I know seems unhealthy, maybe, even toxic, but I hadn't ever been happier because I'd found love on Le Bon Coin. She was €150 and I picked her up at Place Saint-Michel. It was the only time that I've met someone from online and felt that it was socially acceptable to bring friends for moral support, because I'd never bought a bike from a stranger before. I should apologise for the gear joke, it was a double bluff. It really did not work out with that person, but I do think that in some ways I have them to thank for leading me to this really quite blissful anthropomorphic relationship that I've started with my bike. And she's taught me many things that no person ever could have, even if I'd been willing to listen. She's taught me to slow down and listen to my body. In some ways, it's the bike that changed my relationship with red lights more than the red lights themselves. Because now when I see one, I think to myself, what's the rush? Maybe I can rest my legs. They're hurting a little bit. Which you don't get on a Velib if you're on an electric one. And I know that a bike can't give a girl everything that she needs, but I do have to admit that riding her down Rue de Belleville at golden hour is pretty close to erotic. And I actually have grown really attached to taking her up and down my stairs because it makes me feel like a mama bear. I'm protecting her from the rain, and recently my neighbour actually saw me doing this and offered to make me a key for the local de vélo, which I didn't know how to react to because I had no idea we had one. And I'd also grown really, really attached to this ritual. A friend told me a story recently actually about an ex-lover of hers that she met in a bar in 2010. They hit it off, they exchanged contact information, and he organised their first date. They were going to go to a concert, but when they got there, the music wasn't what they expected. It was like very rowdy, two people were dancing on the stage so violently that they made the whole thing come crashing down, which might not seem like a great recipe for a first date, but she told me that in some ways it broke the ice between them and created a bond, a first date excitement. And despite this, she told me that the relationship that followed was actually quite brief and turbulent, and miscommunications mounted until she couldn't ignore her gut feeling anymore that something was off. She said there were so many red flags, but I just didn't want to see them. After this, she says that she did send him a birthday message a little while later, something I won't understand why we do this. We send our exes happy birthday messages 3 months after not speaking. But she assured me it wasn't to reconnect, it was to close the door on their chapter together. So then I was really surprised when she told me that in 2023, 13 years later, she messaged him again. After over a decade of not speaking, she needed to ask him for a favor. Somebody had written about her father in a paper that's only published in the Ivory Coast, and she recalled that her ex-lover often went there for work. She wanted to know if he could bring her back a copy with him to Paris. And he came through without hesitation, to her surprise and mine. After this, I thought to myself, he wasn't a reliable lover, but maybe he was a reliable friend. And this triggered a lot of different realizations for me, actually, and it made me think back to my ex-lover from the year before, and I thought maybe we confused ourselves for lovers when actually what we had was a friendship. Because I'm no stranger to sleeping with or giving my love to somebody that I knew wasn't right for me at the time, diving headfirst into something bright red in the hopes that it will turn green. And I'll take a break from the bike metaphors very briefly, just to throw in a food one. But you are what you eat, and in some ways that includes your lovers. I'm trying to choose mine more wisely, because like with running red lights, I don't believe that red flags are inherently bad. It's how I react to them that's going to determine where I end up. And so I can either listen to them and act accordingly, or I can ignore them and maybe get hit by a bus. I now try and ask myself questions. What is it about this person that draws me to them? Am I going the right way? Did I miss my stop? But I'm not trying to overanalyze. I believe in spontaneity and aimless wandering. It's just that it feels good to move with purpose sometimes. And so after this conversation with my friend about her ex-lover, I took myself out onto the balcony, I rolled a cigarette and I pulled my phone out of my pocket. Salut, j'ai pensé à toi aujourd'hui. Je veux pas être trop direct, mais je crois qu'on n'était pas fait pour être lovers, mais plutôt amis. Ça te dit, j'aimerais bien qu'on prenne un café ensemble bientôt, et sinon c'est pas grave. J'espère que tu vas bien.